Hi, this is the third lesson for the month of October. I picked, well, let's just review. We started week one with Icarus and Daedalus, with really a theme and a message about pushing the boundaries, thinking that the rules don't apply to you, a real life application there. And then last week, we talked about Gordius and the Gordian knot. And again, wow, Greek myths really let us know humans haven't changed. In thousands of years, the human condition remains the same. And there are things that puzzle us. And that's what we learned last week that are so complicated, so complex, they require us to think outside the box. So this week, I intentionally chose another obscure Greek myth. And actually, this is one of my favorites that I've done in a long time because it has such an incredibly strong female character. And we don't find many of those in literature. So we're going to go over Atalantis and the Golden Apples. And I really don't want to read the story first because Greek myths have a lot of origins. And without knowing the origin, her backstory, it's really not as interesting or exciting, and you don't really understand the story. So I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to show you where I'm going to go on my Google document, which is Atalanta and the Golden Apples, the analysis. So according to Greek mythology, Atalanta was born in Arcadia, a region of Greece in the southern part of the Peloponnese Peninsula. As an infant, Atalanta was abandoned by her father and left to die in the woods, presumably because he wanted a son. Wonderful. Her dad was a king. Apparently, the mom was a queen and still living. So, sounds horrifying, but I want you to know this is also something that goes on today. Yeah, sons are preferred over daughters. So she was saved and suckled by a she-bear who protected her until she was found by a group of hunters. These hunters raised Atalanta. She soon learned to hunt like a bear and became a skilled huntress. She grew up fending for herself, hated the idea of marriage, and didn't really care for men in general. Gee, I wonder why. Look what her dad did to her. Before long, she was full grown and fully lethal and hated the idea of marriage. And killing centaurs in the name of Artemis. Okay, so she kind of reminds me of Wonder Woman a little bit. Strong, tough. Now, again, her circumstances made her tough. Would she have been like this if she had been a pampered princess? Yeah, I don't think so. The first major event in Greek mythology where Atalanta appears is the Caledonian boar hunt. The king of the Greek region, Caledon, failed to honor Artemis, so the goddess grew angry and summoned a demon boar to ravage his lands. The Caledonian boar was one of the great monsters of Greek mythology, and many great male heroes came together to kill it. There was also a woman, Atalanta. Armed with her trusty bow and arrow, she was the first hunter to wound the boar, which was unheard of. So this is just showing she's pretty tough. And then there's something about her that really is applicable to the story today. She has incredible speed. For example, she can beat any mortal, male or female, in a foot race. So this is what makes her grow in fame. And this is when her father pops back into her life. Oh, she's the princess. She's the heir. Brings her back home. She grows up. And finally, the king and queen, her mom and dad, tell her she has to get married. And she's, why? Because you're going to be the queen someday and you need somebody to help you run the kingdom. And of course, Atalanta, being a tough female, says, I don't need a man for that. I can hire people. Again, this is, 2000 plus years ago, marriage was expected. So she says, all right, I'll marry the guy who can beat me in a foot race. So this buys her quite a bit of time because nobody can beat her in a foot race. And she also tells them, the guys that want to marry me don't want to marry me. It's not about me. It's about the title. It's about, being royal. So they don't really care about me. That was another reason she saw through them. So I love this. Okay, so as we're going along, and I'm just, doing this from memory here. I'm going to stop share for a second. As we're going along in the story, there's something that happens here. So our problem here is that Atalanta is forced to marry, and she doesn't want to marry. So she puts this condition. Okay, I'll marry whoever can beats me in a foot race. So this is really the beginning of our story element. So you can kind of follow along with me. We don't have a strong protagonist or an antagonist, really. We have Atalanta, and the male interest becomes the son of Poseidon, Hippomenes. We have a goddess coming into the picture, the goddess of love, Aphrodite. And her son Eros. And then we have obviously just the king and queen, who are just at the beginning of the story. So that's really setting us up for the plot development. So the beginning of the story, it's a long time ago in a peaceful land in Greece. There's your setting right there, when and where, right at the beginning of the story. And we know what's the setup here. It jumps right into, she's beautiful, she's skilled, she's one of the fastest women on earth, and her parents want her to marry. She doesn't want to marry. She puts this condition up. So the turning point in the story here, after she has all these races, is Aphrodite, goddess of love, is watching. And you know what happens when you anger a god or a goddess? Yeah, they're gonna put you to right. They're going to humble you, maybe punish you. In this case, she's not really punished. I think she has taught a lesson. So in comes Hippomenes, and he's a pretty, athletic guy. He takes one look at Atalanta, notices she's beautiful, notices her speed, and notices, I can't beat her. But Aphrodite is watching and saying, okay, there's a spark there. I'm going to accelerate this. So she asks her son Eros to throw an invisible arrow of love into Hippomenes, so he falls in love with Atalanta. So this was all plotted. This is a cunning, devious trick from the goddess, right? So in come the apples in the story. You're probably going, what's with the apples? Okay, apples are very symbolic in literature. I mean, look at Snow White. Why did she take a bite of the poisonous apple? I mean, why'd she have to bite it? It was beautiful. Like, it was the perfect apple. It was so tempting that, of course, she bit it. So if you go back into creation, you go back into Christianity, Eve took a bite of the apple from the tree of knowledge of, so was told by the serpent, if you eat it, you'll know everything. You'll know everything. And they were told not to eat. And then she bites it and gives it to Adam. So it is forbidden fruit, the fruit of knowledge. It's also a divine fruit to help with immortality, a divine fruit to promote fertility. So depending on the story, apples have a lot of meaning. So then we have in this story, not just any apple, we have golden apples. Okay. So I don't know what it is about apples, but they are actually the healthiest fruit. The saying is, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's actually not that far off. Really, really good for you. If you're going to eat a fruit every day, an apple would be good. So the golden apple. Okay, so apple itself is a forbidden fruit. Then you make it gold. Gold is a precious metal, really royal wealth status. So this is what Aphrodite does. She knows Hippomenes is going to come to her and ask for help. So she's ready to give it. He says, I can't beat her in a race. I can offer to race her. I love to marry her. I love her, but I can't beat her. She says, okay, you're going to throw 3 golden apples at 3 different times. So you're going to throw one. She's going to feel so tempted. She's going to have to go after it. So you can speed up. She'll catch up to you. So you're going to have to throw a second one. Again, she'll catch up to you. Then you'll have to throw a third one. She'll catch up to you. And that's exactly what happens. He throws 3 golden apples. And by the end of the story, they're neck and neck. So I'll kind of explain the end of the story when we get there. I kind of think something specific happened, and you can agree with me or disagree with me. It's up to you with the story. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again so we can go right back to our story elements here. So we're pretty much we went through the beginning, the rising action, the climax, the falling action. Atalanta was defeated by Hippomenes by hundredths of a second, but likely because she allowed him to win. And you can tell me if you agree with that or not. The two were married after the race and loved each other. So this happened at the very beginning of the story. It says a peaceful corner long, long ago. So the moral of the story here, the how, I'm right here. That's really the theme of the story. And this is really important. The moral of the story was shown when Hippomenes threw the 3 golden apples. So I'm going to put that in red where I'm at. Atalanta wanted to be free, to be independent. She did not want to marry, but it was expected of her because she would become queen someday. Aphrodite giving Hippomenes 3 golden apples to throw worked. Atalanta was too tempted by them and had to stop and pick them up. So this slowed her down enough. And this was the only reason he defeated her. If it was fair and square, just them two racing, she would beat him any day of the week. Okay, so really important here when you look at the who, Atalanta, Hippomenes, the minor characters, our plot development, our problem. She does not want to marry, which is expected. And those of you who are listening, think about your mom. Was it expected for her to marry? Yeah, gender roles haven't changed that much, have they? So I think this part here is going to be pretty easy for you. And next 3 weeks from now, you're off. Everybody's off next week. The second lesson in November will be a story summary, and I will give you this story elements blank, and you're going to have to fill it in. And what you don't realize is I've been filling it in since August. I've been modeling for you. I've been going over it with you in every class. And now it's your time to figure it out. Hippomenes showed Atalanta he was different from all our other suitors. The other suitors wanted to use her because she was going to be the future queen. He was not after the title. He fell in love with her. So his motivations were pure. And I think this is what allowed Atalanta, this is my personal feeling, she probably was skilled. She was a huntress. Look at the background I gave you. She knew. She's no fool. She knew what was going on. So I do think she may have led. Okay, so let me give you the application today. Well, first of all, I'm going to go up here to the definition of a temptation. And where is that? Oh, right at the bottom here. So the golden apple used by Hippomenes represents temptation, and it worked. He lured Atalanta away from the race. In other Greek myths, the golden apples were divine fruits which offered immortality or fertility to whoever ate them. As is the case of many ancient Greek myths and legends, trickery and cunning helped the hero achieve his goals, even in the face of a superior opponent. So the desire to do something unwise, something wrong, is wrong, a desire, an impulse, an urge, an inclination. And here's the reality today. Everyone's tempted. Everyone's tempted by something. Something or someone is waiting to entice all of us to do the wrong thing. It may end up harming us. It may not. We may follow the wrong person, follow the wrong crowd. So let me give you an example of a temptation. I remember doing this a couple of years ago with my students. Just imagine you're walking down the school hallway, no one's around, and you see a $10 bill on the floor. What would most kids do? Right? If no one was around, probably pick it up and put it in their pocket. Now, what would you do if the person in front of you at Starbucks is ordering a coffee and, they're going through their wallet and a $20 bill drops on the ground? Now you know the person who dropped the money. Are you going to pick it up and put it in your pocket? Okay, so that's different, right? I'm going to sneeze. And actually, that's happened to me. So for all of you, my Indian Asian students, I think you can appreciate, I do believe in karma. So I just was like, ma'am, you dropped this 20. She's like, oh my gosh, thank you for your honesty. I do believe it comes back to you when you do something dishonest like that. Now, again, it's a little bit different there. You saw who dropped it. Okay, so I asked my students this week, what do you think is the number one temptation that keeps you from doing your job, your work, whether it's at school or home? And nobody got it wrong. Technology devices, social media apps, texting, TV, video games, you name it. All of these things are temptations. And I didn't grow up with technology. Your parents didn't grow up with technology. And I do think, and I'm a certified teacher, I've been teaching for a long time. I do think it is dumbing down America. I think it's dumbing down the world. Because think about how many hours kids waste on technology. And those hours could be, learning social skills, learning academics, reading a great novel. So yeah, boy, it's hard. I want to give you a personal story. My husband, this was just a few weeks ago. My daughter was home from New York, and we were in the car to go to the grandparents to visit them, their health is failing. So we visit them every weekend or every other weekend. And the Cowboy game was on. So my husband was driving, and he puts his phone right on the dashboard of the car and the Cowboy game. And I go, okay, hold up, honey. Are you seriously going to drive and try to watch the Cowboy game? Well, I'm just going to, do the highlights. And I go, no, you're not. Because you're going to be tempted if there's some touchdown to look at your phone. And I'm in the car, and he was driving my car. I was like, get in the passenger seat. I'm driving. Temptation. Of course he would have looked at his phone if they had scored. Come on. And I just looked at him and I go, really? Just go sit in the seat. Enjoy your football game. That's ridiculous. Really ridiculous. What is so important, right? But I do see that in cars. And I know that kids, my daughter, that tried to text and drive in the car. We all know the story. She hit a mailbox. And she knew not to do it, but she was tempted to look at her phone when her coach replied because she was going to be late. And all it took was a few seconds of not looking. Bam, she hit a mailbox. So we're all tempted. All of us, right? Unhealthy foods. Oh, boy. Manufacturers target kids. We talked about this when we did the Prime over the summer, the Prime energy drinks. Wow. They are looking for kids. Think about Happy Meals, McDonald's. They were the first one to put a toy in a Happy Meal to entice kids to buy there, to want to go to McDonald's. Cereal boxes used to have toys in them. The FDA since removed them because it was so enticing to kids. And yeah, you go down the cereal aisle, maybe you don't like cereal, but anything that's not the perimeter of the store, which is all the healthy stuff, anything in the middle, the cookie aisle or, the crackers, the chips, you're like, go down that aisle, you want to put it in the cart. It's too tempting, right? And we eat a lot of unhealthy foods. We are the #1 obese nation in America, which means we also don't exercise very much. Okay, let's talk about peer pressure. Whoa. It's really hard to say no to friends, right? Well, I want to do this. I want to watch this movie. Okay. Well, I want to go do this. Let's go do this, right? Maybe girls are gossiping at school. Did you see her hair? Did you see? What do you think about that? Do you like that? I mean, would you do that? And, they're including you in a conversation, and you should resist. You shouldn't say anything, but boy, it's hard not to. And boys, if you're watching, you're just as guilty. You talk smack or trash when you're playing a sport because you want to win so bad. You're in the heat of the moment. You're like, whoa! And if your whole team is doing it, you're doing it with them, right? Oh, peer pressure is tough. It is very real. So then you have real predators out there. Mom and dad have taught you about stranger danger. And by the way, that doesn't change. I know my father-in-law, who is 84, was involved in a scam. They go after elderly people. They go after young kids. I had a student in class today. He said, Mrs. Hensel, he said, I was riding my bike. It was getting kind of dark. I was with my friend, and we were, just driving down the road, and a car is going pretty fast. And then he starts slowing down. And I go, what'd you do? He goes, I started pedaling faster. And I go, good. That instinct is right. And here's the reality. There are predators online. The internet is unregulated. So you have to listen to that sixth sense, that gut instinct that says, mm-mm, mm-mm. You know, there's a reason they have red ribbon dare week at school, because unfortunately other kids might try to, suck you into something, and that's not okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, the last thing I have down here is, peer pressure, buying expensive clothes or tennis shoes. You know how kids brag about that. Okay, so I've kind of given you examples here because you're going to write 3 example situations about temptations. And the first one is, there are 3 ways to stop yourself from giving into temptation. I'm right here at the bottom. Number 1, remove whatever's tempting you from sight. So for example, my daughter in the car, she should have put her phone in the trunk, right? And I would tell all teen drivers, don't have your phone in the front, right? It would save a lot of accidents, for adults too. But I think you all can relate to this. There's a reason your mom and dad don't allow you to have technology in your bedroom at night. It would be too tempting. You might wake up and then want to get on your phone or get on your laptop or your iPad. So if it's not in the room, it's out of sight, out of mind. When I pick candy for my room, for my students, I always intentionally pick candies I don't like, because that removes the temptation. Resist. And this is really going to be with peer pressure. It's hard to resist when other people are, talking or including you, and they're saying things you don't believe in, you don't want to say. I'll give you a personal example. My daughter tried out for Coppell High School cheerleader. She made it as a freshman in 9th grade. Had also made it into private high schools, the top school, Ursuline. She made it in, and she goes, I really want to go to Coppell. And I was like, okay, that's not as good a school, but she made it all the way through August. And when she was just about to start her freshman year at Coppell, she says, Mom, I am miserable. If I stay, I'm going to become just like these girls. And they didn't have a nice reputation. And we made the call, and we called one of the schools she was accepted into, and they allowed her to come anyway. So she went to a private high school instead. She knew they were bad influences, and she knew it wasn't going to be right for her, good for her. Boy, what a courage it took to do that. Finally, the third, and she also ran, final way to avoid temptations is to run. And I don't mean literally. I just mean when somebody's, doesn't have your best interests at heart, you run. Remove yourself from that situation. My nephew loves basketball. He made varsity as a freshman in high school. And he came to his mom one day and said, I want to quit the team. Mom's like, what do you mean you want to quit the team? You love basketball. He said, Mom, they're all smoking marijuana. And I don't want to do that. So she let him quit the team, right? He knew that they were a poor influence on him. And again, just like my daughter, what a good kid. So the example situations here are just, imagine a mom is baking delicious homemade cookies, and the house starts to smell like delicious cookies, and your mouth starts watering. You're like, oh, but then you come downstairs and they're cooling on the cooling rack, and your mom says, I'm going to a school meeting. You can't have any, you can't have even one. I'm sorry. If there are any left over, I'll bring them home. And you're like, what? She leaves the room to go get her purse and her keys. What do you think most kids would do? Maybe grab at least one if the cookies around. It'd be hard not to grab one. I have an example here of a virtual reality headset. I'm just going to give you an example. Say your mom and dad are going to go to Costco, and they're going to leave you alone for just an hour and a half and say, you can play on your game system for 30 minutes. After that, you need to get off. Okay, but if no one's there, mom and dad aren't there to know, most kids would keep playing, right? The last example situation is a young teen goes to a Katy Perry concert, is recruited by a modeling agency. She's given a card to contact a woman who appears to be legitimate. And once the girl calls the number on the call card, she wisely involved her mom in the decision. After several phone calls, they have this nagging feeling something doesn't feel right. They soon realize it's a scam. They're connected to a mail agency and agent in New York who wanted the young teen to move to New York all alone. And he told the mom, we have chaperones for her. What would have happened to this young girl? And this is a personal story because this actually happened to my daughter. And she is very, very pretty and has been recruited by modeling agencies. And we went with this agency for 2 weeks and it seemed really legitimate on the up and up until we met him. And that was when the red flags. And as soon as we started questioning him, he said, well, we're no longer interested in her. And we were like, good riddance. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so here is our expository essay outline. Every one of you can do the lead because I gave you the answers. You're going to use the summary and then explain kind of how the theme applies to kids today. Greek myths purposely teach a lesson. In the story Atalanta and the Golden Apples, the goddess Aphrodite put a magical spell on the apples so Atalanta would have no choice but to go after them. Aphrodite knew Atalanta could not control her impulses and would stop to pick up the apples. She did this on purpose to give Hippomenes an advantage so he could win the race. This was the only way to slow down Atalanta, who could outrun Hippomenes any day of the week. The apples in this story and in life symbolize all of the unwise actions that can be tempting to humans. Unfortunately, this timeless tale resonates with readers today who often give in to wants or desires against their better judgment. So remember, Greek myths, ladies and gentlemen, explain the human condition. Just like Atalanta, we are no different. We get easily enticed and lured. And sometimes people are genuinely trying to lead us down the wrong path. So whether it's technology, that's going to be our first example, peers, second example, or outside influences, children today need to be able to use self-control when it comes to being tripped up by temptation. So how do you do that? Well, you remember the 3 R's: remove, resist, and run. So I think this is going to be pretty easy for you. One way to succumb to technology enticements is to remove them from sight. Give me an example situation. And it doesn't have to be like the whole blown up story like we did in week 1 and week 2, just a small vignette. So you'll notice here, I've given an example, and you'll notice here these words, and I did this on purpose to kind of show you that they have equal weight. The stories are about the same length. So one way to avoid succumbing to technology is to remove them from sight. As an example, this is my husband. If an adult wants to watch the Cowboys football game on his phone, he should not be driving a vehicle at the same time. He would be too tempted to glance at his phone, especially if the announcer called an extraordinary play. The best way to stop himself from doing this is to have someone else drive, which is what I did. Okay. And I just made that up. I actually didn't make it up. It actually happened. A second way to stop an impulsive comment or action when faced with the need to follow the crowd, that's peer pressure, is by making an effort to resist any urges. It's human nature to want to be accepted by others, as many adults want to impress their neighbors with their status or wealth. So as an example, say a neighbor buys a new Tesla. This might cause others in the neighborhood to want one too. So they look like they're, equally successful. Even if they can't afford it, someone may be caught up in the moment and give in to wanting to look the part, but run themselves into debt trying to fit in. Okay, so these are adult examples. I don't want any of my younger students, to write at this maturity level. And I'm intentionally giving you examples that are adult because I want you to understand I don't want those from you. You're not an adult, so you shouldn't be writing like that. If you're a teenager, fine, write teenage examples. If you're not a teenager, don't write a teenage example. The last one, to keep a predator from luring someone innocent is to know when, a third way to keep a predator from luring someone innocent is to know when to run away from danger. The latest scam is having a criminal text the urgent message that a package has not been picked up. This bogus text may try to contact a random person in the hopes they will call them back. When they do call them back, they will ask for personal information. This is when the caller should hang up, as they want access to money and have no plan to help with the package. As a general rule, when someone asks for personal information, This is a red flag. They're trying to steal a person's identity or access the bank account. So any three examples here, okay? It may seem simple, but remembering to remove, resist, or run can protect anyone from a sticky situation. So I only assigned body one, the introduction. Okay, so this is introduction. Put right here. Introduction. Okay, and the body paragraph number one. Anybody who wants to add, who has been in my class for more than a year, is more than welcome to add the restated thesis and the conclusion because they know what to do. If you have only been in my class for this summer, please don't write the conclusion, okay? You're not ready. I want you to put all your time and effort on the parts that will give you the most points, okay? All right, so you have the introduction, you have the concluding paragraph. I'm going to put that concluding paragraph. So if you haven't been in my class, please don't write that. Okay, so I have not had a chance really to read the story in class, and I don't want to waste your time reading to you online when you can, take 2 or 3 minutes to read the story to yourself. I just wanted to give you really the analysis of the story elements and the application and the outline so you could submit a really good essay response. So this whole month has been really about you telling stories. The first month with Icarus and Daedalus, it was a long story: who, what, where, when, why, how. Okay. Last month, or the second week with Gordius and the Gordian knot, it was a personal narrative story. So first person, again, who, what, where, when, why, how. These are smaller little vignette stories, and you don't have to go that far into depth. All I need you to show is a situation where you should remove, resist, and run. So it doesn't have to be too elaborate. I think about how I started class. If you found a $10 bill, what would most kids do? I mean, it doesn't have to be real thought out, because I think the idea of a temptation is pretty clear. All right, so this concludes lesson 3 for October. All students will have the fourth week of October off. And I believe November classes begin on Wednesday, November 1st. So have a great week off. Use that time to catch up. And by the way, essays have been so good this month, so keep turning in great stories. Okay, have a good one.